Recording in progress.
Tonight. Okay, then we'll go to item 4, which is comments and questions from the public not related to tonight's agenda. Is there anybody online, because there's nobody in the auditorium, that might have a comment they want to make? Really, I see Barb and Hannah. No hands are up. Okay. So we'll move on to item 5, which is counselors' announcements and reports on committee assignments and the city manager's report. Who wants to go? Elizabeth?
Thanks, Tim. Since our last meeting, I won't go into a lot of detail because some of these my colleagues are
Recording stopped.
Test.
Travis, would it be helpful if I restarted the Zoom?
Recording in progress.
And we are back with comments from Councilor Chunick.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, I was saying it's a light week just due to some conflicts, but I want to thank Elizabeth for attending the Economic Development Committee meeting, which I was unable to attend. Thank you for that report. I did attend the Bike Ped Committee, where much of the discussion, it was a joint meeting with the Burlington Bike Ped Council, and most of the meeting was, we spoke about governance and how our committee relates to the city and the staff and us, management, and how their committee does. And they very effusive in their praise for our collaboration. That they said we seem to work together really well. The committee works with staff really well. Staff works with the council well. They like the idea that there's a liaison in each committee that could facilitate a range of ideas. Suffice to say that they don't seem to have those connections, or those connections are not nearly as tight. And they were kind of lamenting that. Really, it was an exchange of ideas, and they were seeking to maybe copy or duplicate some of the things that we do, I think, pretty well. So that's it.
Thank you, Andrew. Ann?
Since the last meeting, along with everyone else, we all came to listen and cheer and be amazed by our city manager at the South Burlington Business Association meeting. I was attending this evening the Public Art Committee, and to put on everyone's radar, tomorrow from 5 to 7 is the sort of opening reception for what we have out in our gallery, the work by Susan Smerka. So that is good. And as we're putting
So I'll start with something I meant to mention at our last meeting, but I just wanted to mention that South Burlington now has a free health clinic, which is, I think, remarkable and exciting and worth noting. And I hope that we as a council can, in the future, consider finding a way to support. I think it's fabulous in this day. It's at the Islamic Society, which I think is equally wonderful. And boy, we need those kinds of efforts. So I wanted to mention that. And Tim and I had Tim and I at Walking Went. No, that's a poem. We had a conversation with the counselor on a very cold Saturday.
And snowy.
And snowy. And we even had 2 people show up. So.
And I lost $1.
Was that? And you lost $1. Yes, you did.
So, wasn't even DraftKings or you dual fan.
I said they would show up, and I think it's a testament that they do. And there were 2 issues that got talked about. One was, which we've never talked about before, Williston Road repairs, and a request that we lobby the state to try and get the schedule changed because it's just despicable. So that was put out there. And the other was, and we just received a letter this afternoon from Cher Feidelberg about considering developing an emergency response plan for in advance of there being a push of ice in our city. I know Burlington Mayor just put something out today or yesterday, and something that we might want to be considering, because what happens if, and what do we have in the way of response set up. So there was a rec and park meeting on the 9th. There was no quorum, so we had a brief discussion that was enjoyable, but that didn't go anywhere logistically. And then on the 10th, there was a Sexton's meeting, and there was a long conversation there. First of all, excitement about the potential for a position opening up with the approval of our city budget, and a question about whether, if the budget passes, will the interviewing process start so that they come on board July 1, or will the interviewing start after July 1? They're just excited to get that up and going. And they were talking a lot about their Eldridge beautification project, spending funds that came from a very generous donation to that cemetery. They're planning to start that work in April or thereabouts, and they're going to have their final presentation on it in March. And some of what that will involve going forward will be what's required for maintenance schedule in the first year, and then what the annual meeting will look like and how they move forward. So that's the extent of what I have today.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Like the other counselors, I think most of us attended the SBA meeting, their SCBA presentation about the city budget, and that was great to have coffee with a lot of people in the senior center. I also attended the same planning commission meeting that Elizabeth did, so I will repeat what she said. I was with Lori at Orchard School for a conversation with the counselor, and I was certain that nobody would show up, and Peter Taylor showed up, of course. And I had pre-bet $1 and I lost $1. It's the $1 that I won on betting against the Red Sox in the fall. So it's probably a good thing that I lost that $1. It's okay. I think there's a rule against betting and things like that in the city council. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. We also, don't forget, we attended a meeting regarding the city manager's evaluation before last too. So anyway, that's all I have right now.
Thank you. So a few updates from the team. So Town Meeting Day is just around the corner. As everyone knows, we've sent out 425 absentee ballots to date. And just a reminder for the community that in City Hall voting is now available, so you can come in and anytime the city clerk's office is open, and vote early as well. We also do have our FY25 annual reports and budget books available to the community. Erica and Tom are having the project kickoff meeting this week with City Logics, which will generate the new citywide pavement condition inventory data for all South Burlington roads. It will also come with GIS layers of line striping and streetlights, which will be a huge improvement. And we're hoping to have that all done, that scanning work all done by the end of this summer. The library will be closed on March 11th for their annual all-staff training. So we will advertise that in advance, but just a note for the community, it's really because they are now working 7 days a week and have shifts coming on and off, it's a real opportunity to pull everyone together and go through a lot of training throughout the day. I'm going to share a few updates from Adam on the Rec and Parks front. Adam has kicked off planning for an April 18th International Food Festival. We have 11 food vendors signed up to date, and then educational tables and things like that. We also have 60 applications for our new farmers market that will start up this summer for the first time. That will be on Friday evenings and along the new shared use path in the Chamberlain neighborhood by the airport. So a really fun partnership with the airport. We have 11 breweries signed up for our Brew the 802 Street Festival here on Detilio Drive, which will be on May 23rd. And then, of course, parents are eager to know that summer camp registration is open. So get your kids signed up for summer camps. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, the current 7 days has a huge segment about kids' camps for the summer. So check that out if you need to. Alright, so let's move on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. And we have on that item A, which is to consider and sign the disbursements. Item B, which is approve a request to apply for the federal BUILD Build Grant Funding in Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Program grant funding, and authorizes the council chair to sign letters of support committing the city to the required match. Item C, accept the certification of increment and presentation of the FY 2025 annual report for the South Burlington City Center TIF district. Item D, authorize to give the city manager the authority to enter into agreements on behalf of the city of South Burlington to borrow and lend fire and EMS vehicles or equipment with neighboring municipalities as necessary. Item E, accept a corrective warranty deed for the construction of the Dorset Street shared use path between Old Cross Road and Sadie Lane for the property at 7 Sadie Lane. Item F, award the engineering design contract for the Spear Meadows shared use path project to Green International Affiliates, and authorize Deputy Director of Capital Projects to execute all contract documents. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing as there isn't any, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, which is receive a recommended quote-unquote reset of the Parks and Open Space Master Plan process and provide feedback to staff. Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to be walking us through this tonight, but I do want to note that in the audience we have Adam Math, our Recreation and Parks Director, Silken Kirshner, our Transportation and Open Space Project Manager of Public Works, and Paul Connor, our Director of Planning and Zoning. So while I have the privilege of talking about this, this is really a group effort from the whole project team. Additionally, so let me start. So I'm going to walk you through this a little more than I would usually walk through just a staff memo, but I think it's a really important project for the city, so worth some history. So we as staff are recommending what we're calling a reset to the Parks and Open Space Master Planning effort. This is really to ensure that we meet the community goals and give you, as the council, a high quality strategic plan that is actionable for your decision making for the years to come. We came to this effort, we've had some concerns about how it was going for a while over the kind of December and January break, met with some key advisors on the effort, namely city staff, the chair of the NRCC, the chair of the Planning Commission, the chair of the Recreation and Parks Committee, and also their representative to the Community Advisory Committee, and Lori Smith as the council liaison to those two committees and as the council liaison to the advisory group. And that group really brainstormed how best to move forward and are recommending this approach. So just as some background, we started this effort in early 2025. To date, the task was really for the community advisory group to inform the process, supported with input from the committees and the rest of the community. The consultant in the city over the course of the summer did a huge amount of community engagement and collected a lot of data to start building the work product components. We had always wanted this process to be transparent, data-driven, and with prioritization of how to invest in our community into the future as we grow and as we maintain our natural resources and open spaces. And we are concerned that the products that were coming, not the community engagement was great, but the additional analysis, mapping, data-driven foundation wasn't there to bring you a great product at the end of the year. So that's what we really need to reset, is use what we've got to date, bring in some new expertise to develop that analysis, and bring that forward through the process. So what we're hoping tonight, in the memo we've outlined a set of shared goals and values and key questions that we think capture what was originally outlined in the RFP and that we need to kind of reorient back to as a community. So we would love your feedback on those goals and values and key questions, and I will again just intentionally walk through those. They are in your memo. So those are goals of creating a product that is responsive to all customers in our community, meaning all those who live here and visit South Burlington. We really are taking a one-plan approach, so an integrated parks and open space plan that focuses on the continuum of what that means with our public spaces to ensure that we are anchored in the guiding and key principles of the city plan, and look at that active and passive recreation continuum from conserved areas to active parks and how we prioritize those moving forward. We want to center not only what exists today, but what we'll need for the future, and have that be based on data. We really want this to be a policy document that the council ultimately can get behind, informed by the advisory group and the planning commission, who are responsible for moving things forward to you, but with feedback not only from the full community, but from the key policy committees as well. We intend to use all of the work currently completed by the consultants, mainly the community feedback. We have a huge amount of data that we have received from the community and want to make sure we are privileging that moving forward. Travis, are we okay? Okay. And that the final plan takes that data, identifies where there are gaps, uses professional expertise and data-driven analysis to really bring forward that actionable plan for you all. So the key questions, as we outlined them in the original RFP that we are honing in on, kind of refocusing in on, are one, as the city of South Burlington thoughtfully plans for continued population growth, how does the city consider and plan for the future of our parks and open spaces? Two, understanding that there are a discrete number of acres within South Burlington, how do we allocate the space and resources to thoughtfully improve our parks and open space systems while balancing other land needs? And then three, how can the city invest in our existing parks and open spaces strategically, including evaluating the city's existing facilities to determine the correct purpose and future use of each space? So that's how we are currently thinking about the key questions. We have in your memo, I'm not going to walk through this section, but a lot of an outline of the additional data analysis that we will be looking for, and then of reframing back to the roles and responsibilities of each group. So the staff lead and project team will ensure that the plan stays on track from here. We'll coordinate with the consultant and key stakeholders and committees. and will provide feedback and technical expertise in iterative drafts as they are developed. The consultants and technical specialists will use what we've already done and add value to that. The advisory group members, which are representatives from the council, representatives from each policy committee, and then stakeholders from the school district, from adaptive sports and the disabilities advocates, and the South Burlington Police Department, will be the active informers of the plan, work with the consultants, and make a recommendation to the Planning Commission and the council. The advisory committees will receive a briefing on this reset and the path forward, and then provide comments on the final full draft of the report. The Planning Commission, as the kind of holders of land use planning, recommending to you, will review a final version and make a recommendation to the council. And then, of course, the council liaison will be engaged throughout the process, and you'll receive a final draft of the plan and put your policy fingerprints on it at that point as well. So right now, we are, with this reset, acknowledging that in order to give you a plan that's really actionable and aligned to the standards this has for master plans, we do need more time. We are anticipating it will take through January of 2027 for an adopted plan. However, we are optimistic that that is generous, and we may be able to do that faster. Ideally, I would love for it to be done by the time we're building the FY28 budget. And then finally, as you all remember, you allocated ARPA funds to this effort. We have about $55,000 of those funds remaining. We do anticipate we'll need some additional funds, between maybe $30,000 and $50,000 of additional funds, but any future contract and future allocation of funds would need to come back to you with action at a future date. So we're not asking you for that approval tonight. Just want to foreshadow that that would likely be part of this reset. So that's what I want to walk through with you. Adam, Silken, Paul, anything significant you want to add? Maybe if you guys want to come closer to me, that would be great. So we are here for feedback.
Oh, wanna go first? Okay. So, thank you, Jesse.
No,
Excuse me?
the project team.
So I agree that this makes good sense to have a reset and refocus, and I think that really the rub of this is, how do we balance open space and active recreation? And it's a hard question, and I think that's one that we all need to discuss to give you and staff the guidance that you need, so that once with that guidance and that framing, we can hopefully have a smoother process and a plan that everyone agrees to. And in the documents, Jesse, that were attached, you sent around, and focused on two things. One, the goals that were listed in the header memo, and I noted that all those goals related to parks. None of the goals, they all relate to parks, right? So we can look at them.
Do you mean the cover sheet or
In the cover sheet, right? There were 3 goals listed: provide equitable access and investment in parks, maintain and invest in parks, transit amenities, create and maintain, invest in neighborhoods, parks. All 3 goals are about parks. Whereas we know, and I want to go through it, the city plan has other goals related to open space that are not listed. And I think maybe that's kind of part of the problem here, attention. And then the document talks about framing what we should prioritize, and says that we should prioritize access to active recreation that is known and accessible to all. And I think that's like the key thing. Is that what we all agree in a parks and open space plan we should be prioritizing? And I'm going to suggest a revision to that sentence, to that phrase. But before I do that, I just want to go through what our city plan has to say about open space. So first, Overriding, the city plan says the city's guiding principles to make policy decisions through the lens of climate change. That's really important. You can't hear me, Michael? The city plan says the city's guiding principle is to make policy decisions through the lens of climate change. It then goes on to say the world is facing an existential threat from a climate crisis, and protection of our natural resources is a priority of South Burlington. Protection of natural resources protects air and water quality, sequesters carbon, flood resiliency, improves human health and well-being. Natural resource protection serves both climate resiliency and human resiliency. And then there are a bunch of goals. One goal is to protect at least 51% of the city's land area. The second goal, plan for a landscape that allows for continued viability of mammal species, bobcat, red fox, blah, 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 different types of birds, raptors, and all the living things that share this planet with us. And then there are actions. Engage in opportunities for tree planting and ecosystem restoration. Actively engage in removal of non-native invasive plant species and other actions. None of that really is, as I can see, infused in these documents. So, with all that, I'm gonna read something. I can send it around. We can obviously wordsmith or draft as we like, but if I were doing that one sentence, which actually it says, the sentence incomplete says, we focus on management and conserved and natural areas while prioritizing access to active recreation that is known and accessible to all. I think I would say focusing on conservation and management of natural areas, recognizing that the city's guiding principles to make policy decisions through the lens of climate change while balancing the needs for passive and active recreation that is known and accessible to all.
I'll segue on that, Andrew, and talk about this particular paragraph, but also broaden it out from there. I too came up with a change which was a little simpler than that, which was just, instead of saying prioritizing access to active, I was saying balance access to active recreational and accessible to all, and natural space conservation and preservation with a focus on sustainability. And the wordsmithing is something that we don't need to discuss, but I think opening it up to a bigger lens, we're doing a reset on this plan, which I think is really going to be valuable for us. But I think given the city plan's focus on climate change, but more importantly, the impacts of climate change, knowing that climate goals are not being met in South Burlington, which is doing a remarkable job compared to other places in Vermont and the nation, and knowing they're not being met globally, we are going to be facing some significant reset in how our community is operating in the not too distant future. And I think the preponderance of the evidence supports that. So my question is, as we're doing this, are we looking just at how do we support the growing population and the development in South Burlington, or what are the steps we need to take now to ensure that our future generations have accessibility to what is needed to really support lives that are going to be functioning in a different environment than we are today. And personally, I think we need that bigger view as we look at this and ask our consultants to look at business as usual is not what we are going to see in the future. And what do we do to make sure that we can survive and our kids can have good lives in a different world where we are going to be more self-reliant and in greater need of the natural resources that we're going to need to live healthy lives. So that's the bigger question that I think I'm questioning whether we should address in how we direct the consultants. You want one other thing I'll mention is we're 2 weeks away from an election. We know that we will have one different member on our council. I don't know, this is my second year, and I've never been on a transition on a council, but decisions we make in the next 2 meetings influence what the new makeup of the council is, and does it make sense for us to be making decisions now, or do we do it when there's a new constitution in the council? I throw that out as a question for us to consider. And I don't know, I don't have an answer, but I just want us to be thinking about, we don't know how the council's going to operate, and we're making decisions, and past councils' decisions don't necessarily hold with new councils, so what do we as a body think about that? So those are my 2 big pieces.
Elizabeth?
Thanks, Tim. When I saw this on the agenda, I went back to the original scope of the Parks and Open Space Master Plan project and really wanted to compare and contrast what the recommendations were for a reset, and I feel like it's very much in line with what was defined. And to your point, Lori, there's always a continuum. People are going to come and go, and one of the things that I think council does a really good job of is listening to the community and taking that message forward. And as I look at the scope of the project as it was defined initially, it really speaks to the plans will summarize existing parks and open spaces in the city of South Burlington and their associated amenities and natural resources. The plan will use GIS mapping to create a gap analysis for where parks and open spaces could be added to the existing inventory for more equitable and fair access to these spaces for all residents. These master plans will include opportunities for future land acquisition and land management best practices for natural resource protection, including invasive species management. And specific project outcomes included defining characteristics including ownership, access, amenities, and key natural resources, a robust public engagement process, which I think we have done well already, and I want to make sure that as this process moves forwards, all that feedback is honored. It includes, as a second bullet point, a map of current parks and open spaces to identify where gaps may exist throughout the city, an assessment of future parks and or open spaces with prioritization of key parcels, a review of South Burlington's recreation programs, events, and facilities, and lastly, a development of a clear and consistent implementation roadmap to help the city expand recreational access, equity, sustainability, human and habitat connectivity, and environmental quality. So I think the notion of re-wordsmithing something that was defined at this point over a year ago is really not honoring the feedback that we receive from the community through a number of venues in order to take this forward to the next step.
I love what you just read, Elizabeth, and would love to see that, I think, more accurately reflected in this memo.
And so I agree with that. So then what, because this, honestly, original plan sounds more balanced. And Jesse, what do you need? What do you need then in terms of further guidance to facilitate this process and avoid some of the roadblocks and some of the conflicts that arose?
Paul. Hi, folks. Paul Connor, Planning and Zoning Director. I guess 2 things. I wanted to just make a note to the specific line that some of the councilors are speaking to about the prioritization line, where it reads, foundation of this vision is to create one integrated plan rooted in the guiding key principles of the City Plan 2024 by focusing on management of conserved and natural areas while prioritizing access to active recreation that is known and accessible to all. one of the challenges of a thoughtful group project is the writing part of it, and I think that the word prioritizing there was really meant to be prioritizing access, not prioritizing the subject of active recreation over, but to say, as a frank reality, not all of our parts of our community are as accessible to our populations as other ones, and yet some of our land that might be easiest to acquire for, say, active recreation might be far flung from those populations. And so prioritizing access was the statement. It's not very, I think I can understand how it is read in a prioritize the subject over, when it was really meant to be where there is active recreation, make sure that we're prioritizing access and accessibility for all. So I think that could be reworded.
I mean, the sentence doesn't also talk about, say, procuring, new open space. I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
it's not as broad as what Elizabeth read, from the original mandate, really, the original scope.
And I think, so to answer your second question about, what would be helpful, the three questions to be answered that were highlighted in there, one of them talks about, we have a limited total land area. It's acknowledged in the City Plan 2024 that there is, I guess, about 6% of our total land area is not presently designated as either having been built upon in some form or planned for conservation. That's a small percentage that reflects housing, jobs, active recreation, working lands, potentially additional connectivity, which is acknowledged in the plan as needed. That's really, to at least my mind, the core question within that. Obviously, there are opportunities within built areas as well, but not necessarily at the scale for either of these. A large built area isn't going to be converted into a old-growth forest instantly, or into a giant ball field complex. But sort of, I guess, acknowledging that that's a core area in there. I suspect that a lot of you.
Sorry.
Yep.
Can I just clarify? So that 6% is in private ownership now, presumably, and you're saying it's not protected by the city's land development regulations. It's presumably developable, but it's not yet developed. And so your question is, how do we address that? Is that?
So that, when in that top three questions that speaks to this, how do we deal with our scarce resources? I don't know that we can answer it tonight, but I think that is a key question for this plan. And I think, from my perspective, there's management of existing resources. There's, as you alluded to, the take the action to preserve the 51%, and then the root of this, in terms of, it's not 10,000 acres that we're discussing what are the long-term needs for, it's 6% of that, and focusing that it's not it's a much smaller puzzle piece that we're working from.
Is that what's referenced in 2, or is it how do we allocate space and resources to thoughtfully improve our parks and open space system? Is that kind of alluding to that 6%?
Yeah, and I think it says while acknowledging the other.
While balancing other land needs.
Right.
But
so that's that 6%.
Okay, so maybe allocate is. I don't know if allocate's the right word when we don't own it, but okay.
Right. Well, yeah.
How do we plan for it? Do we procure? What do we do?
Right. And I think to the rest of your questions in there, a lot of the things that you are flagging are things that are flagged, as you know, in the city plan. The ones that you called out, and then some other ones as well. And so that was our attempt of referencing City Plan 2024 without listing every single goal. But if that's not coming across clearly, then it should be made more clear. So, just my thoughts.
Is there anything in the, I don't know, Paul, if you can answer this, is there anything in the existing scope that I read that has fundamentally changed or is more emphasized or de-emphasized based on what the reset includes?
You're saying in this proposal?
Correct.
I think, so fundamentally changed no other than being clear in our recommendation that one of the things we've heard a lot from the members of the community is that most of the land is not entirely one or entirely another, a open space or a park, and so a recommendation that it be a singular plan rather than sort of creating two separate areas. I think in terms of emphasis, part of this reset would be to make clear that this isn't the detailed master plan for each individual park or open space owned by the city. That is too big of a task to try to accomplish in one plan, to say this will answer everything we need to know about the future of the next 40 years at Red Rocks or at JC Park. That's too much to ask of one plan. To keep it one step above that, to say what is their role in the city.
But I
don't think that that's a change, but it is a clarification, I guess.
And I see where the original scope did say 2 integrated master plans, but it does say one for park and rec and second for natural areas, open spaces. But it did anticipate those would be integrated.
Right.
And it does reference some prioritization. So is that when you speak to keeping it at a higher level, I would still go back to this original scope and anticipate there would be some prioritization.
I mean, I think that a valuable plan to you needs to have some prioritization in terms of where do you spend your capital and dollars on the subject over the coming 25 years, because we could invest millions and millions of beyond what we have, and so what are the core needs is something I think we feel pretty strongly about.
So, I think this is really good, what your proposal so far, right? I mean, obviously, a reset is needed. There's already been a lot of work that's done, a lot of feedback solicited from the community, which has been very useful. But I have to express disappointment with the consultants' work. One of the presentations I went to, I saw a lot of mistakes. I saw repeated slides that had wrong names on them. I was disappointed. I know that maybe it was a preliminary presentation. I don't know, but hopefully, a second consultant, and you have a new GIS person now, right, as well. So those two things plus other actions will hopefully result in an actual plan. I don't have a problem with this wording here, Andrew. I think with the way Paul explained it, it makes sense now. So I'm happy with this, and it's the direction we have to go. I was hoping that at this point we would have 90% of what we needed, or 85. We're kind of hovering around the 65% probably, right? And we're going to have to spend a little more money to get there. But it's really important to have this document moving forward, so that it helps us allocate, money and hours spent resource on which parks are the most important, for the residents of the city.
I have a question in terms of the product that we got that was not what we were expecting. How was the consultant paid, and is there any way of, the consultant clearly did not deliver what people expected or what the council expected, and was that part of the deliverables, and can we get back any of the money that the consultant was paid?
So the consultant has only been paid for the product, for the tasks done to date, so not the full value of the current, or the contract. And all of those deliverables belong to the city. So part of this next phase is collecting all of those deliverables in a format that we can manipulate and analyze and add to and change, that will then be transferred to either us internally to do analysis or a new consultant.
Thank you, that makes sense.
And the consultant has agreed to be cooperative in
Absolutely.
making that transition.
Good.
Yeah.
So, though they have not, the fit did not get us to the end point that we expected, a lot of the work that they have done is really valuable and will be a resource, even though the new consultant is going to have to get up to speed with what's there and there will be overlapped costs. It makes a lot of sense to take this route. I had a question about the data analysis needs, the second bullet talking about limited forecasting. And it talks about forecasting based on, tied to projected development. And this goes to the question I asked a little bit earlier. Do we want it to be tied just to what the projected development is? Or do we want it to be tied to what our projected future situation is going to be for our kids and grandkids? And I think that there's enough data out there to tell us that things are going to be different than they are now. And how does can this consultant be looking at that? They're looking at what's it going to be when our population is built out like this, but also look at what's it going to be in this different world. And how do we prioritize space allocation and use of our lands in a way that best prepares us for what our kids and grandkids are going to be facing? To me, that's a critical question, and I would love to have that be forefront in the consultants' minds, so that they're not just looking at, we go from this population to this population, but they're also looking at what's going to be the change in our landscape, the way we live, our economy, everything, and how do we hold that in our minds when we're thinking about how to allocate this space? Does that resonate with anybody else on the council?
Yes, that's what we need to do.
I understand where
Didn't know you wanted to speak.
I'm just saying,
Well, no, you.
I'm wanting feedback.
I'm sorry, Lori, you brought up, whether or not, since this is you didn't say me by name, but what you brought up was, should we be making decisions that might be significant, when I have 2 more meetings and there will be a new person? So perhaps I'll ask the council if it's okay for me to speak and have an opinion.
I very much want your opinion. I did not mean in any way to diminish that.
Well, you did.
Well, I apologize. I was talking about how councils change. Your opinion, you are on this council now, and your opinion is very important to me. I want you to know that. So that's why I turned to you.
And did you have an opinion?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So I hear what Lori's saying, and I understand it. I think that, so, one of the goals is to get this plan sooner than later, right? Because we have a lot of things that people want to see. They'd like to see some change down at Red Rocks, right? We have a bathhouse that needs a new design, needs work, right? We have people at South Village have been waiting years and years and years to get some sort of a field that they have money for. The money's there, but there's a wetlands delineation problem, but there's also a priority problem. There are a lot of projects that need attention, right? And this would help us to prioritize those things, right? And I think that's one of the most important things, is to get this ball rolling again, right? We'd like this information. So I hear what you're saying, but we gotta go.
I totally agree with you, and I would hope that looking at it in that scope would not necessarily slow it down, but just give it a context that might be more useful for our long-term planning.
But just a question, is this plan going to have the detail to prioritize at the level that Tim just described at prioritizing Red Rock's bathhouse over, is that part of this? I didn't think so.
The goal at this master plan, as we would envision it, would be to be at the level of prioritizing a little bit more broadly where investments are needed, either geographically or by type of facility, not necessarily the individual investments in an individual park, because that's really for capital planning and all of your work.
But you
I
can't
think
deny.
also to, I would just add a sense to that, also to give you more data on what currently exists and where the gaps are, where the populations are living.
Exactly, and it's those gaps that are going to help prioritize where the money gets spent and where the work gets done, because that's what we need. And we need to take action on those things. So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know if the plan is not going to prioritize any specific things, but say you need more of this, you need more of that. We're going to go, oh, well, the way we get more of this is build this thing here, right? Where we need it. So. What more feedback do you need?
So we are moving forward with the original scope because for a variety of reasons the scope has not changed. As further defined by a staff memo that could always be wordsmithed. So unless you give us specific direction on how the majority of you want us to reframe these questions, we're proceeding in this direction.
That's good with me. Everybody agree?
I think we should just change the word allocate in that second bullet.
To your goals?
It says how do we allocate space and resources? I think what we learned,
The shared goals?
the answer to the following key questions.
It's the second following key question. I think that's where you are.
Yeah.
Oh, the key questions. Okay.
Because I think what we're talking about there is potentially adding to the system, right? Allocate doesn't really capture that.
Space.
I'm still lost as to where we are.
There's three questions that
Yeah.
are set out in the memo, and I'm on the second question. And Paul was describing that second question is about the 6% of private land in the city that's undeveloped, but developable. If that's what we're talking about, I think referring to decisions around that as allocation decisions, it just really, it didn't, I guess, jump out at me that that's what we're talking about. I would want to reword that to more clearly identify that we're talking about potentially procuring additional space.
You have any? So it currently reads, understanding there are a discrete number of acres within South Burlington. How do we allocate space and resources to thoughtfully improve our parks and open spaces system while balancing other land needs? And you want to change it to what?
You don't mean to make it specifically procure, right? Because that would be as limiting
It
as.
says allocate resources.
What would happen if we just put a period after that?
Kelsey,
How does that change?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You could say prioritize.
Silken Kirshner, project manager,
Hold that
transportation,
mic
open
up.
spaces. I think, would it help if we just take out space and make it allocate resources? So the type of resources is,
Just say allocate resources to thoughtfully improve.
Sure. Yeah.
and remove spaces?
That would do it.
Great.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Silky.
I just, Tim, I just
Yes.
had one follow-on question. Jesse, can you just speak to the process to identify a consultant and whether we have to go through a bid process through the next stage so I can understand timing?
So pending any action you take tonight, what we will move forward as a team is likely exploring bringing on a new consultant under the sole source provision of our finance policy. So in our finance policies, I have the ability to approve a sole source contract. You ultimately, especially because of the dollar value here, would have to approve the contract. So you would see that argument. You've seen that before. And we would be prioritizing somebody who, one, is willing to use the data that currently exists and build on that, not restart an effort, to a consultant who has familiarity with our community and isn't starting from scratch and getting to know us and what our priorities are and what the city plan is, what the climate action plan is, and three, has time and capacity to do it now as quickly as possible. So if we can find a consultant that falls into those three buckets, I will bring you a contract to execute with a sole source recommendation.
Thank you.
Under the data analysis needs, my question stands, is there an appetite on the council to, under limited forecasting, talk about open space needs tied to projected development and future needs of our city, as opposed to just projected development? Data analysis and needs, second bullet point, limited forecasting. To expand it so it's not just focused on development, but on what are our future needs, not just including development.
I mean, I can respond from my perspective, Lori, to that, as I feel like the trade-off of anticipating and defining and agreeing on future needs would further delay this project. And we do have a good track record looking at recent past history, and we know things have slowed more recently. And even since the LDR changes, there hasn't been a huge pickup. So I feel like the applicability of this plan, and again, things can always be revised down the road, but I feel like between the values set forth in the city plan and what's being asked for in the reset of this plan, it will address the community's needs into the reasonably far future.
I'm fine with the way it is right now.
I'm fine with the way it is now.
So do you need a vote on this?
I think I had nods about the Silkin's amendment.
Yep.
Okay, then no, I don't need. I think we're good.
Yeah, good. Yep.
Any other comments? From the public? Hands raised.
Tim, could I just say, I went to a lot of the meetings, and I've seen Adam and Silken at all of them, and I am so impressed with the amount of community engagement on this particular project. So I appreciate all your hard work, and I know that community feedback will be respected going forward, so thank you for all that.
Ditto.
And ditto.
Okay, we got two dittos.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Moving on to item number 8, which is receive the annual climate action plan report and plan for 2026. Tina, you guys, our climate action manager. Well timed, almost.
Hi, Bettina Miguez, Climate Action Manager. As usual, I closed the agenda page prematurely. I apologize. So it'll take me a second to get there. I knew I needed for something. Yes. How about that? Is that better? Excellent. Zoom. And good evening.
Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be back here.
Missed you last week, twice.
I know. That's why I'm saying that. Yeah.
You just can't stay away.
Can't stay away. Let's see. Join us, Alice. Thank you. Just share my screen. Share. See if that worked. Nope. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Oh, I never clicked the button. There we go. There. Okay. Slideshow. Okay, thank you. Apologize for the delay. I'm here to talk about, basically give you an annual report on where we are. As you know, I was hired in January 2025, and so it's been a year. And I wanted to give kind of an overview of how we've been doing, what we've been doing, which a lot of it you know, because you have been getting some updates, but still this is kind of a way of looking at it all together, and also some additional thoughts based on the project we just finished with the CCRPC as well. And it's kind of an update and a little glimpse of how I'm looking at this subject for this year. So the Climate Action Plan was adopted by the City Council in October 2022. And as you know, we have a overall reduction goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 60% by 2030 from the 2019 levels. From the presentation in our last City Council meeting, as of 2023, the reduction was about 10% from 2019 levels. We are gonna keep tracking the data to see if we can continue the if we can continue, but also if we can boost that and increase that. So the Climate Action Plan was divided into several sectors. Each CAP sectors had its own targets, some quantitative, some qualitative, and based on the updating of the baseline, we're going to have to fine-tune some of those quantitative targets. So I'm not going to be presenting much on the quantitative part of this, and I'm hoping to work this year on updating those. For each of these sectors, what I wanted to do, and I do realize that I did not include the slide on renewable energy, so for each of these sectors except renewable energy, what I'm going to be doing tonight is talk about the context, what are the areas of high impact, what we've been doing, and what comes next. And that's kind of the presentation today. So I'm going to begin with the buildings and thermal sector. So originally it was 34%. It consisted of 34% of the citywide emissions, but with the updated baseline and the 2023 data, now it's about half of the emissions of the city. Having said that, the emissions from buildings and thermal have decreased about 20% since 2019, and so, yes.
I got a question on that, Bettina.
Yes.
Does that mean that just the background information, it wasn't actually 34, it was actually 50, but we were just representing it wrong, as opposed to meaning that it actually went up by?
So it
That
did not.
percentage?
It did not go up because the emissions have gone down. What happens is that as we rework the methodology for the transportation sector, that changed the proportion
I
of
noticed
each of these.
transportation went down and this went up. So
That's
this-
right.
so
Yes,
that this is
it's a
actually
shifting.
greater percentage than we originally thought.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
So you could consider, oh well, then this is suddenly more important.
Yep.
But as you will see, and we talked about in our last city council meeting, the emissions from transportation have basically remained steady, and therefore, they're both important, both in terms of amount, but also in terms of how to reduce them. Yep.
Thank you.
And so in this sector, the good news is that we have apparently seen some decrease. We're not totally sure because we did have some warmer winters. But the other good news is that we still have some incentives available in this sector, which is useful as we consider how to move forward, and it can help our residents, help us with this. So the areas of high impact, and these are bubbles, and they're sort of meant to be indicative of largest bubble would be largest impact. Again, the quantitative part of this needs to be refined, and so this is just our best judgment at the moment. But clearly existing home at some businesses, even with our commitment to alleviating the housing crisis and adding a number more of housing, we're not saying we're going to double the amount of housing we have, and therefore the existing buildings are currently a huge chunk of what these emissions are coming from. And so the electrification of existing homes and businesses is probably the biggest one, and weatherization is also the thing about weatherization is that it is, generally speaking, can be more easily accomplished perhaps than electrification, but at the same time it has a pretty significant bottleneck in terms of workforce at this point, and therefore it's easier said than done. And then new buildings being carbon free, which, as you know, so whatever we're building, if we can make them as sustainable as possible, then we'll be reducing those emissions. So this is kind of one of the ways that I'm looking at this data, right? So we do not have the model set up. We could not use the same model that we had in 2019. And so I'm creating this data framework of how am I going to keep tracking these items, because I'm not going to be waiting until I have the shiny best thing before I start, and we have been tracking all this data. And so the way I look at it is for each of these different high impact areas, we're going to have some main data supporting it. And so main data is data that tracks directly to that target. So in terms of residential electrification, I have their cold weather heat pumps, installations, and heat pump water heaters. And we also could look at some supporting data, and the supporting data is helpful to understand if we are losing momentum, if it is everything making sense, right? So different lines of evidence can help you understand whether you're moving in the right direction, whether you're going to need to boost something, or you need to pay more attention here or there. And so in this case, the supporting data could be gas consumption, residential electricity consumption, the number of electrical service upgrades that our residents are having, and then now that the authority has been expanded to single-family homes, then we'll probably have electrical permits for a variety of these as well, which could be very helpful to track.
Does permit specify the type of system?
I believe they do not necessarily currently, so it's something I'm working internally to see what we can do.
How often does GMP and gas give you data?
honest, I bother them quite a bit, and I did have in my notes that I wanted to thank our contacts at VGS and GM because and Efficiency Vermont, because I do ping them for data fairly often. As I'm developing this framework, I'm gonna try to also set you know I'm sorry, a date, not a date, but just a frequency of how often I should be doing this. And so maybe it's every 6 months or maybe it's every year, but try not to get them to.
They don't have a
upset.
portal for South Burlington Energy.
They
'Cause
don't.
I can get my own house hour by hour, right? For
Right.
electricity, not so much by gas, but it's too bad the city can't get a hook in it. Just do whatever you want, right?
But I do bother them quite a bit, and I appreciate their support in this. And so, following on that example, here's like what it would be if you looked at the data. And so we have seen installations go up, particularly in 2024. Hopefully that trend continues. And then we have seen natural gas consumption go down. Obviously, this is not normalized by either heating degree days or square footage, but hopefully eventually we could do that. And then the electricity consumption has also been going up that is normalized by meters. So that's why I then have my scorecard that says in this particular area, we're doing okay. It seems like we're doing okay. Again, that's why we have to track, because we got to make sure that we're continuing on that trend. So what we have done, and what, yes,
Where does
sorry.
EAN get their information from as to who has a cold weather heat pump? I mean, would they know? Everyone does.
What was the question? Sorry.
EAN, so you're getting information from...
EAN gets it from Efficiency Vermont, so it does only account for whoever has gotten rebates
Through Efficiency Vermont. Okay.
Yes. Again, that is why it will be interesting to get some fire marshal data. I mean, data from the electrical inspector once we get the permits, because then we can kind of track to see if there are any that are not or why, etc. So in terms of what we have done, and when I say we, I don't mean Bettina, I mean the city, just so we are aware of that. And I a lot of there, as you know, before I started, the city was doing quite a few things to further the climate action plan, and so there are a lot of things that are continuing and are working, and I'm not involved in everything that's going on, and I'm very proud that the departments have this in mind and they're considering how they can help further our climate action plan goals. So in what we have done, so we updated the heating and hot water heating ordinance, and even though that meant extending the exemption, we did tighten it. So I think that was a good update. We also passed, well, you passed the ordinance to reduce the cost of electrical panel upgrades, so by allowing our residents to connect aerially and not necessarily have to dig if there was an electrical pole already on the street. And I do know anecdotally that there have been some residents that have done that, so that is good. And then we were awarded the municipal planning grant for buildings and thermal implementation plan. The RFP for that closes on Monday, so hopefully I'll be back here asking for an award at some point soon. We have also, it's not my day for speaking, I'm sorry. We have also been working on compiling the, adding data, enhancing the data from the rental registry to really identify what are some of the multi-unit residential buildings that can benefit from weatherization and kind of targeting them. We're working with VGS on that. It has been a slower process than we wanted to, because getting the square footage data is not as trivial as you might think. But
that's in the property card. Every property has a card that says how many square feet are with that building.
they do, but it depends on the type of building, what information you get, and it is not necessarily what you would consider heated space, which is what we're interested in.
Does Vermont Gas do an analysis often to try and find a normalized index number per household that might predict that they need to have an energy audit done? And do they approach those owners and say, your bills are high, and we know your house is not it's fairly old. Would you be open to going to Efficiency Vermont? Do they do anything like that?
I do not exactly know how they approach their energy audit offers, so can't answer that. But in this case, it is what we want to do for these landlords, and part of the reason that we're targeting rental buildings is because of the split incentive, right? So typically tenants will pay for the utilities. The landlords do not have the incentive to make big changes to their building when they're not going to reap the benefit of that.
So what topic, I know we're jumping ahead, have we started any projects yet? And if not, is there an ETA for starting a few?
So we haven't started any projects yet together, but VGS has been working with some residential
In
rent.
South Burlington?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. For the weatherization. Yes. So they have been working.
So Bettina, this would be in the future, or if it's feasible, or in your work plan, because what you've done is, and what you put together is incredible. I particularly, you've compiled, or you've identified, to build data to identify multi-unit rental buildings that could benefit from weatherization. There are multi-unit condominium buildings that were built prior to or around 1980. I would just guess that some of them could benefit from weatherization. Is there a plan in the future to look at those?
So the way, so there is no plan right now, but the way that I think that would work is, as you know, we're starting the EV charging in multi-unit buildings, EV charging infrastructure in multi-unit buildings project presently. I mean, we just had the kickoff, and I'm hoping that through some of those connections with some condominium associations, will get a sense of whether that is something that we can be done. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the condos as well, if they have been selling, right, then they have been having some work done, and they're kind of in a different state, right? So rental building, they are not going to update one unit or weatherize one unit and leave the others. Right. But in condo buildings, that could definitely be the case. And so it's a little bit different on how we approach it. And it's also in terms of data, you'd have to look at, comparing unit usage to each other sort of thing, as opposed to looking at the general building.
Yeah,
so it's a little different.
I'll add on to that, Anne, because I sent this question in, but I do feel like I'm part of a homeowners association, and it's duplex, triplex type units, so it's not, there may be some mixed rentals in there, but that's not what's going to show up. It won't fit this bill. But often there'll be mailings, between residents that will say, oh, I'm looking to replace my hot water heater, could be used. I'm looking at, I think about windows, heat pumps, water heaters, the roofs and siding is being looked at in these buildings of a certain age. So there's both, I think, an educational opportunity, kind of an economic modeling opportunity, and there are a lot of those buildings all over South Burlington that are typically more owned. There would be a question of what an association's responsible for, but in most cases, everything I've said, the owner's responsible for, and they're looking for, and the issue is if you miss the timing, the decision's made for 20, 25 years, and that opportunity is gone. So I really feel like there's a good opportunity to address people that are making those decisions.
No, yes, I agree, and I'm thinking of things like roofs or siding and whether those kinds of things. And there are a few on Kennedy Drive, well, I know one, where the association actually pays for the heat. In Manor, I think it's Manor Woods, the individual owners don't, I mean, it's part of their association dues that they pay there. So, yeah, I don't,
Interesting. Yeah. Sorry.
in my second to last meeting, I'm just going to keep bringing up multifamily condominium.
So I would go actually just a step further then. I mean, I agree with the problem, and maybe this will be part of the buildings and thermal implementation plan, and honestly, the next council will probably be discussing this in depth, but I think we have a regulatory opportunity here. We could say to folks, insert ourselves in that decision and say, when you're replacing end-of-life fossil fuel equipment, you must consider using electrical equipment if it's reasonably cost-effective. Something like that, which takes into account that not every building is going to be, it's not going to always work, and it may not be cost-effective. Because I think unless we insert ourselves in that process, really, in that way, most of the folks who do HVAC are just going to do the same thing that they do and that they did. So this will be discussion for future council, but I think it's ripe for discussion.
All right, I'll move on. And so what's next? We are conducting a study on the impact of the 2023 heating and hot water ordinance to see whether it has had an impact on gas consumption and the operating costs of that. And we're also going to try to gather stakeholder input on that as well, in terms of developers, residents, on how it's working. This is part of a partnership with BGS and some energy consultants, and we're going to prepare a paper on it. So I'm excited to do this work because it's definitely helpful to have some extra analytical help on this. So I mentioned the implementation plan, and then I also think that it's important for the city to be considering opportunities for thermal energy networks and how we can help out with that as we develop or redevelop some areas. So
How do we do that?
It's a really good question. I do not have an answer on that yet. I'm thinking we have to be both strategic. We have to keep kind of monitoring what funding opportunities could be available for this, because this is not something that has been blacklisted by the federal government at this point, unusually so, in this subject.
But
And
there's
so,
still a 30% credit for geothermal.
right, it's still there. So I think that it is something that we just have to keep looking, and we have to bring to the table every time that we have
So,
kind of
just thinking out of the
bigger
box here,
developments.
is it something that we could put in our LDRs, that when there's a master plan, there should be something that addresses the use of thermal energy networks for a development, or is it already there, so that at least there's a placeholder where someone needs to consider it?
You'd have to put in a minimum number of units that would benefit from something like that, right?
Yeah, whatever the right, yeah. I mean, there's obviously a lot of thought that
There'd have to be part of a checklist saying that this is a possibility, and we need to examine this, right? Hopefully the price just keeps going down, but I don't know. Because right now they're just drilling vertically mostly. So,
I have done some research on this, but I do not have enough knowledge on what would be ripe to do at this point here. It's just something that I'm keeping track of. Yes, I don't know. I don't have an answer right now.
This building's running on geothermal. Hamlin
Yes.
College is a huge building that did like
Yes.
15 years ago. That's all geothermal. I don't know who else.
Hula,
Hula, that's right.
Burlington High School.
Data.
On Logic.
On Logic.
Logic is
And
geothermal,
Data.
right?
Is it Brian?
No.
No, there's the
No.
air source.
Oh, they're all ours.
Anyway, there are examples, but those are fairly large buildings that, that was part of the initial cost.
And I think that it is important to keeping track that it's not just geothermal, but also potentially other ways of moving basically energy around. That's why thermal energy networks is the preferred way
Yeah,
of
that's
thinking
why I'm
about it.
suggesting it might be useful to include it in a sufficiently sized master plan that there needs to be a bullet or two that addresses it. At least that it's it will get addressed and thought about.
So, for example, Golf Course Road, right? Park Road right now, right? They're blasting like crazy on the north side to get rid of the ledge to put in foundations, right? They're drilling stuff. Why don't they just drill a bunch of wells for every single place and cap them and then go back and make that available? I mean, that's just a dream, but if you're going to disturb the property that much to put in a development, you might as well, if you've got the equipment there, drill the holes and make it available. So, but that's the kind of thing that we've been talking about.
Or if you just have a basement, you can just actually put it in the foundation. That's pretty.
That's another way to do it.
While you're building the basement.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is that,
That she's
new
doing a good
construction,
job.
verifying that residential building energy standards are adhered to. We don't have inspections.
Right.
It's the same, dead horse I've been beating for the last 3 years. So we add that to the, registry and to the electrical safety code, fire safety code, energy efficiency code. Just dream.
And then the housing will be very affordable.
well, no, it's a little permit, right? That's all.
Okay, I'll move on in the interest of time. So then we have transportation, and so again, the context is that originally we thought it was about 2/3 of the citywide emissions. With the updated baseline, it's about 50% of emissions. And as I said before, they have remained fairly stable. So any small emission reduction we have seen is because we have more efficient vehicles. This is a difficult sector because, as you know, it relates to behavior and decisions that are beyond the municipal authorities' control. And yet, I think that the city has been extremely active in trying to do its part in the transportation. So we have a transportation implementation plan from 2023 and an active transportation plan from 2025 to guide actions. We have been working on those. So the areas of high impact, and this is straight from that transportation plan, these are the two big things. One of it is reduced vehicle miles traveled, and those are the high impact actions noted in that plan, and the vehicle electrification and the high impact actions on those. We do have a roadmap here, and we are moving on several of these at the moment. Yes?
I'm sorry, Bettina, I just wanted to recognize, in terms of public transit and the redoing of the bus lines to bring people and businesses into city center, and I think that's great. And I wonder how we build on that so that people will reduce their vehicle miles traveled if they're not walking, if they're not using an e-bike, if they don't have a places that we could encourage GM, whatever it is, Green Mountain Transit, or ourselves have bus transportation between certain places. I don't know if that's for the future to think about how to incorporate it even more, public transit in terms of the climate action plan and transportation, because I think we're doing great jobs, even though I live in a condo that we can't get them, with EV chargers and things like that. Not everyone can have the car, not everyone can walk, not everyone has an e-bike, or they don't like to use it in the winter.
Yes, we are doing a lot.
So what we've done, we have a high-density downtown area, and there's a public bus service that Councilor Pugh was referring to. We have the boardwalk, which we shouldn't walk on yet, but soon. We have.
I mean, one can, should they?
We have, this is something that I didn't know. I was trying to figure out how much work had been done on sidewalks and shared use paths, and 6 miles since 2019. So that is really great, great work from the Public Works Department. And you know, as I said, we have the active transportation plan that identifies specific projects, and we have the public EV charging infrastructure plan that we presented on last meeting, and that I think has a lot of follow-up actions that we can build on. Some of the other things that we're thinking about is evaluating car sharing options for city center. Again, you know, you might need, we are still a fairly rural state, and therefore you might need a car for certain things, but perhaps you don't need to own the car. You can just share the car with some of your neighbors. And as you know, the pedestrian bridge and what is that going to do to our transportation network is very exciting. We got to continue filling those gaps, and as I mentioned, the roadmap for the EV public infrastructure, and I'm excited about the study on the multi-unit residential buildings. I know that it is a difficult, it's a difficult topic, but I think that we can find some things that work, and then move on that as well.
Would Car Share Vermont be willing to put a car somewhere in city center?
We have talked to them about the possibility. At this point, they do not. You know, we would have to find some financial arrangements for
You
it.
have to pay for it?
Basically, yes.
For the car?
Yes.
And hopefully in terms of, will we fix EV-ready standards in new construction soon, so that we don't continue to have a multi-unit residential building issue?
So in terms of municipal operations, our emissions have decreased about 12% since 2019. That a lot of credit for that goes to Lou Brizzi, who is here in the audience, our energy project manager, and we do have a government operations implementation plan, and we've been leveraging the Energy Project Reserve Fund, as you know, to fund energy efficiency and electrification projects around the city. And this one, this is not how we typically present the data for you on the municipal operations, but really looking at where are our emissions coming from, and our highest emissions are from gasoline and diesel combined, basically. And so that is why that one is our biggest bubble. Improving the efficiency of the wastewater treatment processes, so you know, the new Bartlett Bay will help quite a bit when that's done. Hopefully we have some ideas on how to reduce, improve the efficiency of the natural gas use in Harper Parkway, and that will be helpful. On electrification of buildings is still a part of it, but really the big crux is going to be the vehicle electrification.
So it was like the public work, heavy.
A lot of those. I mean, we have ambulance, fire. I mean, we have a lot of vehicles, specialty vehicles that are, you know.
The fire engines aren't
Nuts.
going in as many calls, right? They're going with every ambulance
Yeah.
call, so hopefully
Right.
there's a decrease, except for all the other cars, the calls they come in.
So do you have a sense then of, I mean, acknowledging that at least in this country, electrification of heavy vehicles is not as far along as in other places where it's actually progressing pretty well. Have a sense of what we might reasonably expect then? Like how many non-heavy vehicles do we have that we can replace?
Lou, do you want to speak to that? I mean, he knows pretty much. I mean, he has been looking at that, has been looking at what we can do, what we can reasonably do with what's available now. I mean, ideally, any specialty vehicle that is purchased is an electric vehicle from now on, to be honest. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to get to. And interestingly enough, Lou has also been following renewable diesel, and that would be that could also be a pretty significant way for us to cut our emissions if we were able to source it, so create enough demand in the region for that to come here and source it. So those are kind of that's where we're at this point. But yes, trying to be honest. And so.
But Tina, I think
Yes.
you're going to mention something here, but actually, you can go to the next one. But what's the status of solar? I mean, we realize so much savings at the landfill, and I know you're going to mention it in Bartlett Bay, but is there still opportunity there?
For the on the municipal side, I mean, we're mainly considering, so it would be whatever new construction happens, mostly. The police station, for example, Public Works, they get some of the electrical benefits from the landfill, right? So we already have quite a bit of power generation, and we can't really sell to the grid at this point. So, but I think that, if we ever have a new indoor recreation center or something like that, any of those big projects, we should be trying to incorporate solar.
Would there be any value, would it be feasible, to put solar on the new addition to the fire station?
So the fire station is not currently in the downstream, right? I mean, yeah, it would be this much. I mean, it would be more symbolic than.
Because the
But yes.
solar rate largely covers the city's electrical uses. We in fact allocate some to the school, right? Because we can't use it all the
Right.
time.
Particularly, it's seasonal, but yes.
Yeah, right. So I mean, it's not people mostly cover, right? So this is really about the rest of the city, right?
Potentially any building that doesn't have solar could have solar, right? If it could accept it, and it would decrease its consumption from the grid, period. So,
I think the problem is that some of the, I think the commercial building codes, if it's not specific in some way that we adopted, then it was strong enough.
Yep. So what we have done, I think you mostly know about this. We have 6 all-electric vehicles, soon to have 7 EV charging stations at several of our buildings, and plans in the CIP to make sure that we get them in every municipal building. The boilers, I've talked to you about that before as well. And so some of the things that some of the next things that come in the municipal side are, as I mentioned, Bartlett Bay, right? So there's the solar array and also the effluent heat recovery, some more EV chargers, adding electrical vehicles as they come, and also the hybrids. At some point, we will hopefully send you a short memo on the work that Lou has done, looking at how the hybrids have indeed decreased the gasoline use for the police in a significant way, and also optimizing energy use, and as I said, evaluating the renewable diesel. But that would be as we mentioned, that would be a more regional effort and not just a city effort.
How are the EVs being received by staff? Are they liking them? Oh, is that a hard question? No.
Well,
Oh,
I think
no.
we do.
Don't ask a question.
Yes, I did not put it here. I should have put it here. We do have to have probably a little bit of education on
Your city manager
use.
gets stuck in Montpelier.
Oh.
But
Out of power, or couldn't get us started?
no.
Neither.
Neither.
User error.
Okay.
Unknowing that very cold temperatures
Oh.
create big problems.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some education first.
Yes.
Okay.
I think generally speaking, they're very well liked. They're fun to drive. They're very useful. All of those things. I think that we need to do more of the proactive education about how to use them.
Yeah. You need to have. You only have half the miles you expect. That's what you want.
Yep.
Half.
Did not know that.
Dress warmly.
And travel and how to use the different charging stations, which one
Yeah.
work.
Well, and having a city account to be able to charge.
Exactly. Yes. And it is not simple to travel TV until you learn.
I want to hear this story later.
Is it too new to gather data on the cost effectiveness of the EVs versus fossil fuel vehicles?
So we, our goal with Lou is to, as we hit the 1 year mark of having the vehicle, to see, okay, how many miles has that vehicle traveled, and do that assessment. So it is still too soon, but we will get there in the next few months.
Okay.
Yes. And then the other sectors, as I said, I did not include renewable energy generation as a big item here. We talked already about how that how we connect at the municipal level, but I am going to get data very soon from the CCRPC, who collects by municipality renewable generation data annually, and so I should be able to get that data soon. Last I had seen the progression in terms of adoption of solar kind of citywide was tracking our goals for 2030 pretty well. So if that were to continue, which as we know, federal solar credits are no longer there, so that's not necessarily going to happen. But if we were to continue on that path, at the same time, as we know, for new buildings, we're requiring that. So if we were to continue on the path, we would actually meet the 2030 goal. I'm looking forward to see whether the 2025 data also was showing that same trend. But other sectors, so this is where in my opinion, the climate action plan kind of puts a lot of things together in one basket, and it's a little bit hard to see what you do with that, and the targets were not quantitative, and so it's, I would say, where I have worked the least in the last year, but I think that particularly in terms of resilience, adaptation to climate change impacts, I think that there is broad support, and I have had conversations with residents that are interested in this subject, and so at least in that particular area, I think we can make some progress. So I put this one out. It doesn't mean that the other ones don't exist. It's just on some of the other ones there is less of an impact, or for my role directly to do something. But and here, they're all the same size because we haven't really done a baseline assessment of where we're at. What is it that could be the worst? And so I think where I'm planning on going with this, and I know I got a few questions about what's the heat action plan, what do you mean by that? And really what that is kind of hot weather preparedness. I think resilience covers a lot of stuff. It covers anything from a power outage and having batteries, having generators, or having other ways of accessing electricity. We know that the South Burlington Library is a cooling center, but it's only open certain hours, certain days. Now every day, but and so there are a lot of things that we can do in terms of looking at what are we expecting to see in the coming years, and part of the reason, I'm sorry, kind of blabbing a little bit, but obviously we still have extreme cold weather as well, and I acknowledge your question, Councillor Pugh, that what about hot weather, what about cold weather, and what we're doing in that. So I'm not dismissing that, but I think that we because of the climate we have had, there are a lot more resources regionally already set up for cold weather, but hot weather is kind of a newer thing that hasn't necessarily been looked at with enough detail, or that we kind of track what we need to do. And so that was mainly why I was going towards that in resilience. But I think and what I'm thinking when I say a heat action plan, I mean, there are several, as I said, there's a guide to how to do hot weather preparedness. It can be extremely big, or it can be a lot more targeted, and I think that I kind of want to do it modularly and start small, and then we see what we do. But if you look at our local emergency management plan, all of our shelters none of them have cooling, and therefore this is definitely something that we do not yet have something prepared for.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate that the global warming is what is people most concerned about. I would say, though, that while coldness, and we live in a cold community and a cold state, that we have, yes, resources, but people in South Burlington don't. And, or they may, but we have not identified that. And just as there are things that homeowners can do around heat and to keep heat out of their house, there are things that homeowners can do, or renters can do, to keep the heat in or to be warm. And I would just hope that in the future council and your future work, what you've done in a year is incredible, but that you think about cold as well.
Yes, I do think that when we're looking at weatherization, when we're looking at reducing our gas consumption in the winter, we are looking at how do we keep that energy, how do we keep those homes warm. So in slightly sideways, we're getting at that, but I agree that that doesn't mean that everybody has access to a warm and cool and safe home, right? I mean, it's something that hopefully we will strive for.
No, I do acknowledge that you're keeping that data and that we are doing that stuff, sometimes without identifying why we're doing it. And
Yep. So there is, hopefully we can understand a little bit more where we're at with resilience generally, like identify, we have the local hazard mitigation plan, we know what our hazards are, right? So where does that match up with some additional guidelines, some additional policies, some additional partnerships that we can do related to climate change to kind of strengthen that and be a more resilient community? That is something that hopefully we'll be looking at.
Tina, can
Yes.
Just go back, I would probably just add, and because you already got this on this slide, food insecurity does an oval, right? You've already got support for local farms, community gardens, and that's because, right, the bread baskets in the U.S. around the world are going to be under a lot of stress. We're going to need to think about and have local resources to fill gaps.
Yep. I agree. Yep. So next steps, there's a lot of next steps, but in short, as I said, I do want to try to model some of this stuff and especially use some of the visualization opportunities from the ClearPath 2.0 model. We'll see where that goes. I am also ready to discard it if it does not fit our needs. And then I think that it'd be a good idea to prepare a short report on the status of the actions of each of the implementation plans that we do already have, because I think that helps understand that where we might have lost something and where we need to keep going, and also show all the work that we have been doing for each of these. And continue gathering the data, setting up partnership, exchanging, and with other municipalities, and also in particular for the municipal investments, doing those assessments and going back and showing what we have accomplished, both in terms of emissions, but in terms of dollars as well.
I add one more to this list, and I'll throw this record here, and I think it's already on our policy priorities, but data and reports on how some of our regulations are operating, right? So the renewable energy ordinance, what are people doing? What heat pumps are they putting in? Are they using gas backups? How's that split in practice operating? What kind of heat pump hot waters are they using? How much solar has been installed as a result of our solar EV mandate? Just getting some tracking reports. I think that data is really, really important, both for us to know whether we need to further refine, change, how are things working, to share with the community the impact of the policy decisions we've made to, help build political will for those policy decisions. So I think that data is really important.
For example, commercial solar, I have no idea how much commercial solar has been installed since we passed that. I'd love to know. I have a more esoteric or generic question. So, you've been here a little over a year,
Yes.
right? Do you feel challenged in this position? I mean, is this easy stuff for you, or do you feel like you're being used effectively? I mean, are you happy with the work that you're being asked to do and the work that you're doing? I'm just curious. Do you love this job?
I am very happy with this job right now. I
Good.
think that there are still, some parts are more challenging than others. Some parts are easier for me to tackle than others. But
Because we never had a climate action manager before.
yeah, I know, and I didn't really have a report to base this on either, which was a little hard. So hopefully, if you have other questions, obviously.
What do you
Here.
need from us?
I think City Council has been very supportive of the city and furthering their climate goals. So I think that at this point that is good. And then also just I think if you have particular resident concerns that come up regarding this, that if you can funnel those towards me, I think that is helpful as well.
I got a couple of quickies. The work you've done in the last year is awesome. And the reports you gave 2 weeks ago and the report today, though some of them are somewhat sobering, it's really valuable baseline information that you're giving us that we can actually benchmark and see how we're doing. And I think that's fabulous in terms of feedback for community and for us that hopefully will come over time. And I know you've got it sort of in your last bullet, but is looking at cost-benefit analysis of the climate action position and the climate action work that we're doing, not not just for us as a municipality, for what it costs to run the climate action organization and what we are saving annually and long term to show the balance of costs, but also what the work we're doing in this area means for financial benefit for residents who are engaged in the activities that you're promoting, what it means for homeowners, utility bills, their comfort, etc. So that when someone says, you got to make the hard decisions around your budget, wink, wink, we know that we can say, yes, this is something that's giving us payback in real measured ways that we can demonstrate to the community. I think that would be helpful for us to know and to be able to share.
And I had a more operational question. I think at the last meeting we had approved the 1-year trial of the ClearPath 2.0 model, and then you had sent out an email looking for a volunteer from council to sit on a committee or something. I can't remember exactly, but I'm curious as to when we're considering an investment in the data set or the service or whatever it's referred to, that seems like an odd request to make.
Yeah, so ECLI is an organization that does several types of work on sustainability related items with municipalities. They're a network, they connect municipalities together, and their request in their application is mostly as a way to send information and opportunities to political leaders that are interested in their topics that they deal with. That is, it's not really to sit in a committee. As far as I know, it is mainly to be receiving information. But we can talk about that.
While we're on that topic, I would love to do that if that's okay with folks.
So, Elizabeth, was the odd request question about the ICLEI volunteer?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
for meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've worked with ICLEI before in previous roles, so I'm familiar with that organization.
So I felt that was where there's a vested interest in a decision that will come before council for a financial investment, and coupled with the criteria, because having been down this path before, the criteria is that as a member you're listed, and it is an advocacy group, not unlike a recent discussion we've had, to try to reconcile that along with largely the commercial aspect of it that's tied to it through the organization.
So I'm not sure that's a question for you, Tina.
Yeah.
I think that's a question for the team.
ICLEI's not an advocacy group. They're an organization that assists, I think they're a 501c3, they assist municipalities in assessing data, in baselining. They're not a lobby group.
ICLEI.
I did look them up to get some background, and they do advocate for policy. And they do list their members. But beyond that, would we normally allocate a resource from council? Arguably you could say it's a volunteer role, but it's a different role to take when you are assessing a investment decision.
Can you say more about what you mean the investment decision part of your question?
Because the trial, my understanding is what was approved at the last 1-year
Of the trial of the product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. It is I think one of the things you've heard Bettina talk about tonight a couple of times is the access to good data to measure to both set quantitative goals and then to measure against those goals, and that, you know, that's a industry that's still catching up to the politics, and I think our staff interest in joining ICLEI is that they do have some interesting data available and data models available that we think might be good, something we want to try as we try and set good measures and measure against things. And you're right that it's an organization that's bigger than just the data holding. You know, Bettina and I had a conversation about the council volunteer. It was my recommendation to suggest her to just email all of you. Another one of you brought up that I probably should have gone straight to Tim and asked Tim what he wanted to do as your chair. I did not think of that in the moment. Sorry.
It's okay.
But it is, to Bettina's point, it is something that's for us to join, to list these things. I also pushed back and said that I wasn't sure they understood. When I looked more closely at like what the actual role of that elected official is, I was like, oh, they don't understand a council manager form of government, because it is about kind of, you know, managing the work and, you know, all of those things. So Bettina found some additional information about who those three, you're required to put down 3 key people, so she can walk you through who those people are. And this happens a lot in different applications where you list contacts. Usually they're all staff contacts. This is just because it is, I think, perceived as more of a political organization. I think they want access to the local elected officials more than other groups where we just put staff down as the key reps.
But, and we are, if the council prefers that we just put a staff person, we can put, you know, the city manager in that position as well. So,
I think it's
I'm sorry,
important to share.
Could you say that?
so there are 3 contact people. There's a primary contact staff, which would be me, because I'll be working on the model. Then there's the highest elected official, which in this case, because it's a city manager, council, form of government, it would be Jesse. And then there's a primary elected official, which would be a politically elected person that has a specific interest in what ICLEI does, right? That's what they're asking for. And that person was the one that I was suggesting perhaps somebody in the council would want to volunteer for. But if we are concerned that it is not good idea for whatever reasons, I could put another staff person there.
Oh,
so
okay,
I could
so it's not,
potentially put Jesse again.
so it's not a requirement of the grant or whatever?
No, there's no grant, right? No, it's an application, yeah. So it's an application for membership of this organization. So once we are members of this organization, we have access to their tools.
Oh, okay.
And that is how
Okay.
that works out.
So people should just, you know, the history of ICLEI. This is like a decades-old organization. This is not like, you know, I worked with ICLEI back in New Jersey 25, 30 years ago. They were already a mature organization. This is like the premier organization for working with municipalities across the country and across the world. So just understand the context. Like they're really the only game in town for this work. This is what they do.
What other, we're members of the League of Cities and Towns. What other organization are we members of?
I mean, depends how you define.
Oh.
That's how you define membership. I mean, we're members of GMT. We're members of Champlain Water District. We're members of the Solid Waste District. County government. CCRPC. We pay dues to. Lake Champlain Chamber. We pay dues to. GBIC. We pay dues to. We're members of a lot of things. And then a lot of our professionals are members in their professional associations as well. Like I'm a member of ICMA, Paul's a member of APA. Those professional. Steve is about to be the head of IAFC.
So I would really like to do this because it's really interesting to me. But if folks have concerns, I can't imagine obviously what they would be, but anyway.
I mean, to me, I think the benefit is getting exposure to how other organization or municipalities are using the metrics. And clearly, we're already running into situations where our baseline has changed because we had better information available through the DMV. I suspect that's going to continue to happen. But I also feel like the community's made an investment in a climate action manager and in a data manager. So long term, I mean, I think we may find this investment is a good one for a period of time, but I would hope that ultimately, once there's agreement on the metrics, that we can be doing that in-house too. So it to me, it's just the combination of the perceived requirement of a membership organization and the fact that there's a investment decision that's going to be on the table as well, and that I don't think we've ever had this experience before.
We get a 1 year. Oh.
Well, I'm calling it a trial period because I'm not sure that we will want to continue with that. So it is just a 1 year membership.
Okay, 1 year membership.
Oh,
That
you're
is
buying it.
we buy for $1,800. $1,800, $1,800.
1800.
1800.
Yeah. All right.
Andrew?
Because we're a sufficiently small municipality, right? So it's based on municipality size calculations.
Andrew's willing to volunteer his time to be engaged with this. I think he would be a benefit because he's had experience with ICLEI in the past, and that organization has a lot to offer us for the climate action. So
They actually help
I wouldn't be
me
in favor
write a
of that.
climate action plan.
Yeah.
Can individuals be members?
I do not think so. It's just municipalities. It could also be regional commissions, like the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission was for several years. So it's just municipalities or some aggregation of municipalities. You can be a member, and it will give us access as a city to the resources for anybody, not just for me. So anybody in the city government who's interested in perhaps some other resource that's available there, they would have access to those.
So do you need a motion? Andrew, is this person council or just agreement of council that? I mean, I'm okay with it. That's fine. Lauren? Ann? Sir?
Yeah, I again, because I'm not sure if it comes down to a decision to approve a contract that, like you said, Andrew, according to you, it's the only game in town, and so there's likely to be, well, I'm not going to anticipate that, but yeah, I just wanted to point out that's different than anything we've done before.
You know, I do, so one, even with Andrew playing this role, he's got no more power than a voice of 5 people. He can't make decisions about how we continue on with ICLEI without you all weighing in. Two, you know, I think this is I don't know if we need to go there right now, but I think this is an interesting, bigger question as councilors take on more roles. I mean, I think Lori's done that with Parks and Open Space Master Plan. I think Lori and Tim are doing that with the City Green conversation. Like, I think that I think this is something that the council may want to kind of keep their eye on about as you get out into doing the work, what that means to keep the 5 of you committed to one another, that you're still operating as a group of 5. So, just throw that out there.
5 is better than gang of 4. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everybody. It's 8:45. We'll be back at 8:15. Thank you.
That
It's 8:55. So welcome back to the zero conversation, one person conversation council meeting. Thank you. And we're going to go back to item 9, which is receive the second FY26 policy priorities and strategies report on the shared annual plan. Jesse Baker.
So so this is our second report to you on our annual work plan. As you may remember, last work plan we just brought you, or last report we just brought you the capital projects and the ordinance updates. This is a full report out on all of our efforts. We've tried to make Anna, our data manager who is online, spent a lot of time trying to make these more glanceable, more dashboard-esque, so you could see quickly kind of where things were. So I'm not going to walk through them all, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have feedback on information that would be helpful over time, happy to have that as well. You'll also see in here, this is always an iterative report, trying to make it better. So Anna has, where available, also started adding in budget information and quantitative measures ideas, to the earlier point about how can we start measuring the impact of our ordinances, and if they're making the change we want to see on the ground. So you see those in some of the items. So with that, I will stop and answer any questions or feedback or.
I think this is an amazing report. I mean, really clear and just tremendous amount of information. Really well done.
The format.
A couple of questions. One question: the section on regulation or ordinance updates. I guess the question is, it's a question for the group, for the council. Should this be dynamic? For instance, we talked about updating the LDRs to correct them in light of the government's executive order, right, for EV charging, which is not here because it wasn't on the work plan, because it hadn't happened yet. But should it be, so that we keep track of it the same way, because we decide as a council what we want to do? Yeah.
Do you mean like have a parking lot for?
No, I just mean on this page which talks about regulation or ordinance, it's the same format.
Adding one more line, because it's something we did that wasn't on the priority.
Yes, it was.
8 months and I haven't realized how to turn on push. When do we look at if what we did got the results we wanted? I mean, I read this as, have we done them? Have we completed what we wanted to complete? Or where are we in that? And I'm curious as to when or how do you assess that what we set out to do and that was done actually got the result that you were hoping for when you set up the task to begin with?
So I think, so you'd heard Bettina talk about some of that tonight.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we are trying to build out.
Okay.
Now is how do we put quantitative measures to, what's the problem we're trying to solve in the community, and what's the quantitative measure that's going to tell us if we've solved that thing, and then over time with which frequency can we report on them. So I think that is part of what Anna is thinking about, is defining the measures now, and then is that part of policies and annual policies and strategies where we provide you that report? Is that part of the annual report? Is that part of the budget process going into? I don't think we've necessarily made that. Right now, we're really trying to focus on what even is measurable, and then incrementally give you relevant reports.
something green all the way across, it may take time for us to know whether the end result is what we expected it to be when we got there. That's, tracking this is really important, and then having a follow-up of, did we get the result we expected? It sort of goes beyond what this report is giving us.
Or there would be another set of stripes saying repeal. Or add another layer of something on top. Yeah.
Anna, feel free to jump in if I misstate something.
The only thing I wanted to mention was that ideally our yearly policy priorities and strategies are by our city plan and the goals of the city plan as well, and achieving those goals. So part of measuring success for PP&S activities would also involve kind of measuring success towards our goals, because ideally those are what we're impacting.
Just
I love
sort of thinking about that out loud, I do think the metric side of it, doing it on more than an annual basis, generally speaking, I think would be a lot of work. So I could imagine whatever it's tied to, if it's a budget fiscal year, or if it's a when these are updated with an annual report, I'd sort of pick a annual period of time to start adding the metric side of it.
This report, just to say, this report made it really easy to look at. This was so much easier to look at than the spreadsheet. And the comments on the spreadsheet, and it's like, oh, this is refreshing. So, thank you, Anna. Thank
Yes,
you,
this is
Essie.
100%.
It's like, oh,
This is all Anna.
It's all in.
The spreadsheet was all
Oh,
just
Anna.
very hard to read. This is all Anna, much better.
well, it's a great
Presentation, Matt.
presentation. Thank you.
And I guess I should also say, like, Anna has done a phenomenal job with this, and the department heads are all contributing the information. So it really is a group effort to try and be more accountable to you and the community and to one another also as we're moving things forward.
And I only hope that it's as easy to put together as it is to read, because then updates would be easy. You just push the button and the data updates, and here it is. It's not that easy, but thank you.
One question about the parking management plan. I didn't realize we were that far along that we completed a final plan. I thought we were going to kind of get another presentation, talk about it, and figure it out.
So you have adopted the conceptual plan, and now we need to move to implementation, which is all the ordinances, all of the staffing, all of the fund, all of those things.
So just, I mean, just make sure it's the conceptual plan. I mean, there were still questions about what exemptions there might be,
Yeah.
whether it's a 2 hour, or like there were all these questions.
Yes.
In your mind, that's all implementation details.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, implementation in that those are all policy questions that you will have to, we will bring you recommendations, but you'll have to grapple with as you consider ordinances.
What is the framework?
It's the framework of how the parking, having a parking management plan, what that looks like across public spaces and private spaces, and that we would start with as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Because when that plan was presented to us, we also had a lot of feedback on the plan itself. Has it been revised?
I think you adopted it as presented with feedback on how to implement it.
And then as things come forward, you're gonna incorporate our feedback
Right.
into the implementation plan, and then we look at the implementation plan and say yay, nay, or adjust.
Right. Well, and that implementation plan will come with ordinance updates,
Right.
creating new funds, setting a new budget, like the, potentially approving contracts with private landowners for use, or lease agreements, or procuring technology. There's many votes left to take in that, which is where all those details of implementation
Mrs. Levin, there's that one sign that says council chair parking lot is free. It's out front, right next to the front.
Reserved for the chair. We'll put a chair out there. You can sit in it.
As a retiree from UVM, I get free parking at UVM. Perhaps you want to initiate that here.
These are the details that will have to be gone over.
How many years were you serving UVM?
No, how many months for here?
Any other comments on this?
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Good job.
All right, going on to item number 10, which is review and approve the summary of the annual evaluation of the city manager. I did write a report. Would you like me to read that in public? As we did last time. Okay, so in late January, the city of South Burlington underwent an annual evaluation process of city manager Jesse Baker. The city department heads were given a form to complete that had 7 sections to rate numerically from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest or best value, and 3 general questions for written comment. Her highest average score, very close to 5, was given for the category of city manager leads by example. We also had 5 community members that were surveyed, and they had 4 scored categories of the same scale, 1 to 5, in areas about leadership, fair treatment, positive work environment, and effectiveness. All scores were 5. Comments were also solicited. For her managerial strengths and constructive feedback, the community members had very positive feedback on her strengths and very little on what could improve. Then City Council was given a different form that had 50 sections with numerical ranking from 1 to 5, same as before, and 5 questions for written comments. Jesse's mean scores were very close to 5, with the highest ratings for areas like individual characteristics, relationship with the council, fiscal management, professional skills and status, and resident relations. These results were collated and presented to the council for discussion and summarization. The results of the review were excellent, with very high scores and complimentary comments. The council also gave constructive feedback, discussed challenging personnel issues, and praised Jesse for a productive and professional 2025, and reiterated their appreciation of her work. We are, again, very happy to have you as our city manager. So, does that fairly assess our city manager's evaluation for 2025? Great.
I would move to approve.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jesse. We'll be back at this one. Going to item 11, convene as Liquor Control Commission. Can I have a motion to convene?
Motion to convene.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 We are now in Liquor Commission, and we need a motion for the approvals of Trader Joe's, the Golub Corporation, Back 9 Indoor Golf, the Four House outside, and that's about it, I guess.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous as well. I just want to make a comment that somebody at work came to me yesterday and said, I went to one of these establishments and I could not get served. And so he asked why. He goes, because the liquor license had not been approved, had not been renewed in time, and we only meet twice a month. I'm like going, interesting. So maybe they should apply a little bit earlier to make that one, whatever that duration is. So there were some thirsty people at that establishment that were frustrated. So because of this, that won't happen for, again, whatever. So I need a motion to come out of liquor control.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're now out of liquor control and at item 11, which is review the significant agenda topics for upcoming council meetings.
So I listed 3 different council meetings here. So Monday, March 2nd is the pre-town meeting, annual meeting and public hearing with the school board. That will be here at City Hall. March 5th, which is the Thursday after town meeting, is our annual organizational meeting and orientation for new counselors. That's the meeting where you also take all your annual actions around paper of record, procedures, things like that. And then on March 16th is our next regular meeting, and right now the big items on that agenda are recommendations on Bartlett Bay, the e-bikes and shared use paths, education and communication plan, and the Q2 financials. And just a quick thing to note on the Q2 financials, there are 570 invoices that you approved tonight. The finance team has really done an amazing job getting through the backlog that was in place because of the transition to NetSuite. So that Q2 financial is actually going to be Q2 plus a month, 6 weeks, to give you the most complete picture we can of where we are with finances. You'll also improved in this report with this new system, both be able to see budgeted, what we've encumbered, what we anticipate paying, and spent to date. So hopefully, more advanced report.
I see. Okay, something on the bridge.
Yes. Andrew, yes.
Any other comments on item 12? All right, let's move on to item 13, which is other business. Is there any other business? Seeing how there's none, we are going to possibly go into executive session, but we need a motion for that.
So I move that the council make a specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the council's discussion of probable civil litigation to which the city may be a party and the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options clearly place this public body at a substantial disadvantage.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous.
I now move that the city council enter into executive session under 1 VSA section 313 A1E and A2 for the purpose of discussing probable civil litigation to which the city may be a party and the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options, inviting Jesse Baker, Steve Locke, Paul Connor, and Colin McNeil into session with council for the discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is also unanimous.
And-
Now in executive session, and